guys, so today we're speaking with Anurag. Anurag is a senior director at Alvarez and Marsal, where he works with the transaction advisory team. Anurag has almost spent 6.5 years at A&M, prior to which he was at EY, where he spent almost about 6 years. And Anurag is a CA by profession, and he is also a graduate from SRCC. And we are here to kind of take his views on pursuing consulting as a career path. And Anurag also happened to be like one of the seniors who I was very closely with during my time at A&M, had great learnings and was very fortunate to have received the mentoring from Anurag directly. Really excited to have you, Anurag. Thank you so much for taking out the time. And so let's kind of deep dive into it. So we just wanted to, initially start by going through your undergrad days. So when you were at SRCC, at like the most premier commerce college in India, how were you thinking about your career? What were the options? And then how did you think about choosing CA as a profession after your BCom, and how was that journey? And also, if you can share some light on how was SRCC days for you, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, so SRCC absolutely was brilliant and super fun. Apart from skipping some of the lectures, to also scoring one of the highest. I mean, hostel guys were quite famous for doing all the stuff in college, you know what I mean, and then still scoring the highest in the year-end exam. So we were sort of notorious for that. The days were quite fun, quite a learning. I come from a small city of Ajmer, so it was kind of a culture shock to see in Delhi different kinds of people. I was used to be a topper in my school, and now suddenly I was amongst the toppers of different schools and different cities, right? So it was quite a learning, quite a humbling experience in that sense. People were kind of skills they had, not only in terms of their academics, their academic knowledge, but be it debating, be it dramatics, be it whatnot. I mean, culture and diverse knowledge in terms of economics, in terms of what career paths one should be choosing, in terms of, I mean, quite a diverse experience. So quite a humbling and diverse experience I got over there, apart from making many friends of a lifetime, right? So that always helps, and that's been quite a strong support system throughout since the time I left college in 2005. What are the career options to that question, Aman? I think I would say, obviously, there were two sets of students over there, one doing commerce honors, BCom honors, and another set doing economics honors, right? So eco honors were always studying those long lectures and prints of macroeconomics, microeconomics, and all that. Never got into that, so I don't know what you're thinking. From my perspective, the career options were two largely: either do an MBA or do a CA. CA came more naturally because my dad is a CA, and one of my mentors, whom I consider a mentor, my cousin brother, who's 10 years older to me, he was a chartered accountant. He had done his articles from PWC, so there was a set career path in front of me which I could just emulate and get into. So it just happened that I was more focused on CA as a career option instead of MBA. Yes, I did try, looking at everyone else, that I should also kind of make an attempt, but I would say that attempt was never kind of a wholehearted attempt to spell the cat, and did not get the colleges of my choice. And then I thought that might as well make it big in the CA profession itself and take the journey forward in terms of consulting eventually.
Got it. And you've kind of always spoken about your articleship days as well, and how that was a learning ground for you. How was that experience, and how did that shape you to make certain choices that you would eventually after kind of completing your CA?
Yeah, I mean, so in Big Fours, typically, there are, sectoral groups within audit. So, I wanted to do my articleship in audit. A lot of people are also intrigued and like to do it in tax or tax, tax structuring kind of experience. Different people want different experiences these days. I recently met a few people who are very focused and want to do their articleship only in valuation, or people who want to do only in internal audits. I don't think, we at that time used to have such specific and thought through choices. PWC happened. There was, as luck would have it, or I was directly placed into a financial services group. You're not really given an option which group you want to choose. You just, I mean, you get what I mean, right? So I got into financial services group. Now, after that, obviously my, the journey in financial services has been amazing. Actually, I got to do a lot of, audits of mutual funds and AMCs during my articleship days. And the good part, I think, about articleship in Big Four is that if you are focused and if you are able to deliver, then partners do trust you to lead the entire assignment, or the meaty portions of the assignment by yourself, despite you not being a chartered accountant. You're not a chartered accountant yet, but they can trust you because you have grown there, you understood the nuances of audit over there, the importance, and your rigor kind of shows up. You are more enthused in your early days to do your best, etc., etc. So that kind of gets rewarded, and hence more responsibilities are given to you by the time you are towards end of second year of your articleship. So I think that was a very satisfactory, I would say, experience, wherein the partner whom I used to work with trusted me with a lot of key analysis, some of the complex areas, for example, in mutual fund diligences, like, for example, investment valuation. Right now, I understand, still, or at least till, 4-5 years back, the templates that I created for investment valuation was still being used for those mutual fund audits in that group. So that gives you a lot of satisfaction that, your articleship was not just about, doing all the not so important work or, side work, but something which really changed the way things were happening. Right. So, and another thing that I think happens is you get to know the importance of sticking by the book, or in terms of how you behave, how should your behavior be with the targets, the clients, etc. Right. So all of that polishing happens really well when you do articleship from a Big Four. So I think there are pros and cons, I would say. Yes, you are restricted to one particular sector or one particular type of work in a Big Four, but at the same time, there are certain other softer aspects that you improve upon. Right. So yeah, that's how it was. Articleship was fun. A lot of good articleship friends, a lot of good articleship seniors who I'm still in touch with. We, meet regularly. So yeah, it was overall fun experience. Aman, you rightly pointed out.
Got it. And I think there is also like a famous story about your CA final exams that you often shared with us. And I think you gave an attempt like earlier than when it was due, or when people were expecting, and then do you mind sharing that as well?
Yeah, that is true, Aman. I think I've told you a lot already. Yeah. Sorry. So yes, that's true. You pointed out right. So yes, what happened is that in my final year, what institute came up with this change in rule. Earlier you were allowed to take your final attempt in the last 6 months of your articleship. So the institute changed the rule that you're allowed to give whatever attempt is coming in the last 12 months of your articleship. So although it was not a mandatory shifting behind of my attempt, but yeah, one more attempt before the original attempt that I thought I would be giving opened up, right? So I took up the challenge, and I thought that, CA anyways takes, 2-3 times to clear. So might as well, study for this one and hope to get, pray to get out in the first shot. And as luck would have it, I managed to sort of clear both the groups in first attempt, which was a preponed attempt, and enjoyed the balance of my articleship on a higher stipend and a lot of comp offs at the same time. So yeah, that last year of articleship was super fun. Very less work and a lot of money as an article.
So Anurag, kind of shifting gears here. So after your articleship, you cracked the CA exam, you shifted to EY, to consulting and diligence. So maybe can you just throw some light on the pros and cons of a career in consulting, because you've built like a very illustrious career over the last 10, 12 years, and your key motivations at that point in time for moving to consulting and staying on.
So, Dave, basically, yes, after my articleship at PWC, I actually again joined PWC Consulting, actually in the financial due diligence practice. I was there for almost, I would say, 1.5, 2 years in the transaction advisory. At that point of time, this Satyam fiasco happened, so there were, certain issues internally, etc. So I thought it'll be better to, at that point of time, move to EY and continue in my financial due diligence profile that I wanted to. EY was a great learning ground. Had amazing set of seniors with whom I learned with, an amazing quality of work that we did together, and across sectors, across retail lending, corporate lending, and within retail lending. There was too much, a good amount of work, which would keep you occupied and keep you learning on a daily basis, right? So So as I mentioned, right, I started my journey in my articleship days in financial services. So good or bad, I continued, being part of financial services sector, even as an associate. Typically, you do not have hard segmentation or Chinese walls at associate level between sectors, right? But since I was sector focused right from my articleship, I continued to be that. And I think it has helped me only. Well, a lot of people think that being, aligned to only one sector kind of narrows your learning curve, but I think it just helps you go deeper into one sector, right? I mean, that is also equally important
Yes, yes, of
when
course.
you have to deliver complex assignments, help out on complex deals to your clients, right? So, my UI journey continued, in financial services. Had an amazing set of partners to work with, amazing set of directors to work with. Uh, quickly kind of climbed through the journey, joined actually EY as an associate, became a senior associate in the very next year. Then in 2-3 years, I became a manager. And, it's an amazing set of experience, not only as you graduate from becoming an associate to a manager, right? Apart from handling or having a view on the complex areas in the assignment, you start quickly handling the other softer issues like handling, building, keeping the team morale high, right? Or how to stay motivated and keep the environment of the room light, even in a high pressure situation, right? So all that becomes very critical for you to grow as a leader, because if you yourself are demotivated, right, how would you have your team work hard, unless you have Oman with you to kind of keep slogging and take the right outputs out for the client, right? So it's a very difficult task. It's a very demanding career, right? I mean, you got to be very clear right from day one that you don't mind working hard. I'm not saying that in other profiles you don't work hard, because I know only consulting I can say for it that it is demanding. Okay, I'm sure private equity is equally demanding. Investment banking is equally demanding, because I've seen these profiles closely as well as part of my profile. I've not seen too much of corporate profile though, in terms of, what do you do day in, day out, and is there pressure, only on a quarterly basis? Obviously, in corporates also, you have different profiles having different pressure sets, right? Sales guys may have a very different pressure set compared to a finance guy or an internal audit guy. So,
Yeah.
so coming back, what exactly you want me to talk about in terms of my career at EY?
Yeah. So one, I think, question that I wanted to check was like in 2007, 2009, right? At that point when you joined transaction advisory, that in itself was a very niche group. Private equity was just getting started in India, and due diligence, not a lot of people knew about it, right? So how did you think about a career specifically in M&A and transactions at a time when it was very niche? So like, were you tempted to kind of continue in audit, or how did you take that choice at that point in time?
So, Aman, basically, there are 2-3 aspects to it. Yeah. I mean, one is that when you are a fresh start accountant, you would have a handful of opportunities. You may want to do a lot of things, but you have to make a choice amongst the opportunities that you're getting at that point of time. At that point of time, when I cleared CA, Lemon had almost, just happened. So a lot of external eventualities were like that. And as a chartered accountant, honestly, at that point of time, people used to prefer more of MBAs into, investment banking or private equity and stuff like that, right? FDD as a profile, 70-80% of what you do in FDD, my thought was, is audit only, right? And it broadly is. You need to have those basic understanding of accounting, auditing, and stuff like that. So it was quite aligned in that sense to what I was already doing. The pay was higher. Apart from that, it was the closest that you can get to the transaction side, right? Because again, as I was telling you, some of the you get cues from people who are close to you, near you, what they are doing and stuff like that, and that's how you start of thinking about your own career, right? So the closest I could think of was the cousin of mine who was part of the M&A team of HCL Tech. So I thought M&A was something cool. So let's just go for it. And financial due diligence happened, right? So it was not so much difficult of a career choice. Yes, I did have one or two investment banking roles also at that point of time, but they were not, and then you kind of choose between brand versus profile, right? So PWC was a much stronger brand compared to the brand of the investment banking guys that were offering me a role at that point of time. So I just went ahead with PWC, thinking it to be safe, within the comfort zone and at a higher pace. Why not? Honestly, that was the thought process.
Sure, Anurag. And so after spending about, I think, 6 years at EY, where you really cut your teeth as a consultant, as a diligence professional, you made a move to Alvarez and Marshall. So can you maybe throw some light on what were your motivations to go there? What were some of the challenges that you were seeking?
So basically, in EY, I got a very solid learning base, and I was managing quite a few projects. Even my second year as manager, I would have handled, I think, 18 projects in 1 year. So I thought that, it is time to kind of explore something new, and A&M came in as a perfect fit for that. Obviously, again, there was some bit of comfort zone over there. Honestly, I didn't have to give any interview at A&M to join A&M. And I already had director at EY who had already joined A&M a year before. I decided to join in. In fact, two of them, and a couple of my colleagues also at the same level. My peer set also had already joined in A&M, so I had some comfort despite A&M being a new consulting firm, in the market. I had that comfort, so wanted to explore something new. A&M gave me an opportunity to try my hands on commercial diligences as well. It was a very small team and open culture in that sense, and obviously the pay was higher, so decided to just go ahead. I mean, it was looking good from all angles. That helped me make the move, and I'm just getting into the next phase. I think we'll probably get into that as well. What happened at A&M, right? So at A&M, actually, after I joined, we won our first commercial diligence in financial due diligence in financial services. I'm sorry. While A&M already had a very strong team in logistics and consumer, we were trying to build a financial services team in CDD over here. And just so happened that only after I joined, we got our first job, and then there was no looking back. Honestly, I mean, we did tremendous amount of work in financial services after that. And in fact, in my first 2 years, while I was tagged to financial due diligence team, I was doing only commercial due diligences. So yeah, I mean, it was quite a different learning experience. I think I have added now to to my profile, because not many financial due diligence team members get to experience the commercial side of it, or how to look at transactions a little differently. Obviously, as private equity, you guys look at it holistically from all angles. But for a core FDD guy to also have a commercial, to wear a commercial hat and think about the macro market and the micro market and the competitive landscape and business plan future, not only based on historical, but actual, talking to the experts and having your own view through reading, etc., and then commenting upon it, was a very, very different learning experience. And towards the second year of my A&M journey, I was actually leading commercial due diligence assignment. So all the hard work done at EY also kind of started paying off, because eventually you can learn new things quickly if you've done so much work, and kind of start reaping benefits out of it.
Sure. And Anurag, just for the benefit of everyone and all the listeners, what are the key differences and what are the skills that you apply on an FDD deal versus a CDD deal? And generally, what is the expectation and the output also? What are the fundamental differences between financial and commercial due diligence, and how do you approach the two kind of differently?
Okay. So I think both the purpose is very similar to support a transaction. But as you do a transaction, you need we say in our language, 8-year view, 3-year historical, and 5-year forward. So FDD takes care of the last 3-year view, and CDD kind of takes care of the next 5-year view, giving you a holistic 8-year view when you are making the deal, right? So I think the objective of financial due diligence is that, honestly, till that point of time, till the time financial due diligence starts, a lot of number game has already happened, right? You've already, the investor or the corporate, whoever is acquiring or investing, already has had certain set of representation, certain set of MISs, numbers, certain level of valuation discussions have already happened, etc., etc. But having said that, before putting in their money, they want to be sure that whatever was represented to us, was that correct or not. While everything is in good faith, but as you would do before any big deal, you would not like to have any surprises for you later. So you kind of take care of that through financial diligence, one-off trends, any observations from every consultant in terms of any transaction documentation matters that need to be incorporated, any implication of the historical trends that could have on the business model, any adjustments to your valuation parameters, be it EBITDA, be it, depending upon the sector that you are diligencing upon, you want to be sure of that part. Now, future is what, you want to make out of it once you have invested in that company or acquired that company, right? So the hat that the investment professionals, in my view, wear over there is that, are there enough growth drivers, first of all, that are impacting the industry in which my target operates? And then once that is clear, yes, there are enough support drivers, enough growth drivers, whatever challenges are there, they are enumerated over there, and you know the mitigants against those, challenges. Now that macro piece, macro view is over, you know that, the market is going to grow at, let's say, 15%, 20%, 25% CAGR over the next 5 years. Big picture gets cleared. Then you want to understand that, within that industry my target is operating, what are the key differentiators that the target has, right? What does the competitive landscape look like? Is the company I'm going to invest in, are they selling something which the others don't? Are they catering to certain target audiences which the others are not able to do it properly, right? So those kind of questions kind of start taking care of and build an investment thesis around it, that yes, there is a moat around the particular target in which I'm going to invest in. And then eventually, how are all these macro market picture? Micro market is basically specific regions in which the target is operates in. Macro market, micro market, differentiators, or the uniqueness of the target, and eventually how all of this kind of will impact the P&L or the balance sheet, or as the case may be, depending upon the industry, the future business plan of the company, right? And that plan has to be nuanced based on, will the company be able to hold up their prices? If the competition is going to increase, will my margin shrink? I'm finding it difficult to recruit people. Will I be able to scale it up, not scale it up? So all those kind of commercial questions, which you have to kind of wear a more educated guesses, I would say, that you have to put into picture, so that that how the next 5 years should look like, and does that give me enough value to invest today at whatever valuation I'm getting it, right? So that's how you have to kind of wear slightly different hats for the common objective of supporting the overall transaction, right?
So, Anurag, since you've been one of the few people to actually work both on FTD and CDD and get like proper experience in both, can you maybe just throw some light on? Because I'm assuming that the skill set that one needs in FTD and CDD in terms of the outlook, in terms of the role is very different. Now, since you've done both, can you maybe throw light on how if someone starts an FTD and they, want to get CDD exposure, typically what more should they add to them in terms of the skill set? What more is required?
So I'll tell you what is required in a good FDD professional is, first of all, technical excellence. The investor is hiring you for your technical knowledge. Does the accounting look right? Does the targets financials comply with those norms, labor codes? There are very specific laws, regulations applicable to different industries, right? You have to be technically, first of all, competent to understand if there is any bomb sitting in the financial statements, right? Tomorrow will suddenly a huge PF liability will come on the company. Now that is the competence for which you're being paid for as a every practitioner. So that is the de minimis that you got to have, right? Apart from that, what obviously is required is an eye for detail. In FDD, you're playing with specific numbers, and there is, in my view, no margin for error. In commercial diligence, however, I feel that you are more concerned directionally where the business is headed or where the industry is headed. So there is a slight difference in terms of how minute those numbers kind of mean to you. Having said that, even in a CDD, in a very thin margin business, the client would expect that even an error of 1% EBITDA could make a huge difference in the valuation, right? So, I mean, I'm leaving those specific things apart, but in general, you got to have, technical competence, rigor, and eye for detail when you're doing financial diligence. In commercial diligence, you got to be able to think not only, I would say, while we say that, 5-year forward view, but also, in fact, in your mind, you need to at least create 10-year forward view, because in 5 years time, when your investor is going to sell off his stake, and at that point of time the industry is not attractive or the target is not attractive, you got to tell him today, and not saying that, next 5 years look great,
Correct,
right?
correct.
You got to have, what to say, ability to talk to different industry experts or leaders of the industry, and create your hypothesis and kind of try to prove or disprove that hypothesis. In FDD also, I would say there is some bit of hypothesis building. You try to do your smell test and try to do a sense check where there could be an issue in the financial statements or things like that. But that ability needs to be just one notch higher, probably, when you're wearing a commercial due diligence hat, wherein, you do all those hypothesis building and test it enough through numbers, through your research, as well as through, interviews with the industry leaders, to give a fair assessment of whatever the question is, you're trying to handle. So do the numbers and do the experts in the industry kind of, and based on your own knowledge of that industry, all these 3-4 sources or approaches or methodologies kind of talk to each other. And if not, then is there more work that you need to do to be 100% sure of the inferences that you're making out of what you have, right? So it's more inference based, it's more hypothesis based, and there is more, obviously, commercial and macroeconomic kind of outlook associated with it, whereas in FDD you are more restricted to target, but you go much deep into it to make sure that there is no, again, as I'm saying, and no bomb sitting over there which can just burst later, right? Which can come as a surprise for the investor. Both are equally important.
Got it, got it. No, that's very helpful color. The other thing that we wanted to ask is more around recruiting, right? So as you rightly highlighted, for FDD, the core competence is knowing the financials, knowing accounting, and therefore CAs kind of tend to be preferred. It's almost like a requirement that you have to be, and everyone on CDD team is always a chartered accountant. And so from a perspective of a CA student, right, who wants to work in M&A and who wants to kind of work in transaction services, what do you look at when you're recruiting? Like the typical part tends to be the one that you followed, where you've done your articleship at a big four and you have picked up the basics and the chops of auditing, right, in a similar kind of an environment which is more close to what you'll be doing in actual world at a target, right? So that is generally been the preferred path. But for folks who, for whatever reason, variety of reasons, didn't get a chance to kind of do their articleship at a big four, how do they make a transition? And as a recruiter, how have you seen people make up that learning curve once they kind of join the team?
Yeah, man, that's a very pertinent question. And as I was, also discussing the pros and cons of doing articleship in Big Four. We touched upon that. But having said that, I think there are few things which are, you cannot compromise upon. I mean, okay, let me take a step back. When you're hiring for an associate, okay, you're not that hard on the individual, honestly, right? There are certain broad things that should check out in an individual, in my view. One is the culture fit, right? So the individual got to have the basic ability to communicate. Apart from that, if you're not wasted your years in articleship, you would be able to come up with decent technical answers. And people are not harsh. If you've worked on certain things, they would ask you typically questions around those areas. It's not that, Aman, you have never worked on ESOP, but I want to ask you a question on ESOP accounting, right? Or something random. You have end-to-end done industrials, and I want to ask you about some RBI regulation of capital adequacy. People, I mean, know that it doesn't make sense. So basically, you should be very clearly communicating in terms of what areas you have done, what level of complexity you have done, what kind of trust you were able to build in your articleship, even if it was a mid-size firm or a small firm, right? What difference you were able to make. And if you were able to really make the difference, you will come across as someone who can be relied upon. And Big Fours and other non-Big Fours who are doing good in financial due diligence are hungry for such people, right? They want people who are committed, who are ready to take accountability, responsibility, who are self movers, and who want to grow, right? So that passion kind of is visible during, while people say that half an hour or 1 hour is not enough to judge people, but mostly it is enough. The person asking the right question, and if the person who's being interviewed is able to communicate well whatever accomplishments he's had, although it is articleship, so what, I mean, you got an opportunity to make a difference in whatever areas you were trusted upon with, right? So that would be my suggestion. I think even if it is a non-big four articleship, try to take meaty opportunities, try to shoulder more responsibilities on the work that is being given to you, so that you come across as more thoughtful, more mature accounting professional in your interviews if you want to change. Because technically speaking, as I tell all my associates, senior associates always, once you're a chartered accountant, you are technically allowed to sign off the most complex balance sheet in India, right? So you should take your articleship or take your work with that thought in mind, that tomorrow if I want to sign set of financial statements independently, will I sign it or not? If that is a thought process that our articles today take while doing the articleship, I think whatever I said in terms of accountability, responsibility, and being technically excellent, and your ability to communicate well, all of that will automatically flow from this simple thought. So I think that is critical.
Got it. Got it. And I think one useful part that even Big Four articles who've done the articleship in tax, for example, have done, or some who have not done their articleship at a Big Four, they also tend to spend 1 to 2 years in audit post qualification and then pick up those skills and then transition. I think that's also one path that a lot of people take, even if you don't immediately get that break right after your articles.
Look, the way I would think about it is that if you did articleship in tax, there would have been certain thought process, right? Maybe you wanted to become a tax professional, and then if you want to change your tracks, any changing of tracks from a normal course does come with associated cost and time, in that sense, you know what I mean. So if you're not anyone looks for the relevant work experience, right? So if someone spent 5 years learning how to, let's say, construct a building, and tomorrow I want to become an accountant, obviously there is a time lag associated to it, right? So yes, I mean, that is a path, but I think it's very important hence to spend some time before joining an articleship as to what do they want to do. So it's very important to spend that, even if that means, I know 1 month, 2 months is not typically sufficient, but it's good, and people are helpful, right? So if you ask 20 people that I want to talk to you and understand what is the best career opportunity for me, or what does it mean to become an FDD professional, or what does it mean to become a tax professional or M&A tax guy or this guy, that guy, people will, you can expect that, generally people are good and they would be forthcoming to explain you what does it entail. You got to do that research before you choose your path, even in articleship. Once you have done that, I don't think you will need to kind of change gears, etc., and look for an alternate career from what you have already chosen. But if you have to do that, yes, as Aman said, that is another way to get into the financial due diligence profession, wherein you can maybe spend a year, couple of years honing your audit skills, honing your accounting skills, as part of the audit team of a big four, and then eventually think about your move to FDD.
And generally for CAs, is there a path? Like if somebody like you, I think you kind of obviously touched upon it in your earlier answer on after FDD, how can people do it? And but that tends, the reality is like, there are very few firms which will offer an integrated service and an ability to kind of move teams. But if you are a chartered accountant who is spent some time in audit or with the big four and want to do CDD, maybe not like the direct steps, but what can they do as part of their work so that they are more CDD friendly in that sense? Or, what are the things that they can practice to think about the questions that you solve for when you're doing CDD?
Again, you're making CDD sound more aspirational, which I don't want to. But anyways, nonetheless, I think, look, as you start, gaining experience of, let's say, 20 diligences, 25 diligences, automatically the kind of questions that start coming to you as an advisor are more broad based. and not restricted to specific accounting treatment and stuff like that. And to kind of to be able to handle those questions, you anyways start making your thinking or your learning also more broad based, right? I mean, you would not, even as an FDD professional, not restrict yourself to the targets financial statements which you are anyway supposed to do, but you would also see what are the benchmarks. How is my company looking like compared to other players? Are the financial KPIs and operating KPIs in line or offline? If offline, why so? Right? So that kind of starts opening up certain channels in your mind wherein you're not restricting your thought process to that company, but you start covering the overall industry. Because ultimately, I think the questions that also come to everyday guys now are not only with respect to specific accounting treatment and did the guy comply with clause X point Y of so and so Ind AS, but why is their employee cost as a percentage of average AUM 7% instead of 5%, which is there in the industry. So you got to know that. There are kind of, the earlier you start that, the better. You should start doing that even as an associate, even if you're handling a particular, even the minutest of, or least complex area. I mean, you got to understand, spend that time with your seniors, spend that time on research reports or industry benchmark reports and stuff like that, and figure out that, okay, does it, you start developing that sense of smell, right? Does it smell right? Doesn't smell right? So start questioning your own work, spend more time instead of just closing it down by, just preparing that data book and writing that page. If you are willing to spend that additional 15-20 minutes, half an hour, just to think more broad based in terms of industry, it just helps you over the period to not only be able to switch hats as you grow. You may get different opportunities. You got an opportunity amount to join private equity. Certain people would get opportunity to join CDD, investment banking, whatnot. It's just important to, apart from doing what you're supposed to do, make that extra effort to be more knowledgeable at an industry level, what that means, right? So that I would always suggest that, that thought process should be applied right from day one of any job. I would say, even if you're in corporate, while you're supposed to do certain things as, let's say, a CFO, but what are CFOs doing in general? What are the best practices? I mean, you got to know, you got to broad base yourself in whatever you're doing. So that would be my advice. That'll allow you to kind of wear different hats at different points of time, depending upon the circumstances, because it's just that you are more knowledgeable and you are ready to put in that rigor. And honestly, it's very difficult to find people who are always motivated and kind of self-motivated to do all the hard work and take on a lot of responsibility. It's very difficult.
So Anurag, given the fact that you've spent a lot of time in financial services in TD across FS sector, so I think one question that I really had was, early on in your career, you would have been probably running FDD, CDD assignments on more, say, traditional kind of players like banks, NBFCs, insurance companies. And off late, there has been a rise of a lot of fintech players, whether it's consumer lending, payments, insurance. So typically, is there a different way that you'll approach it structurally in terms of how do I diligence this kind of tech financial services business versus, say, a standard NBFC? Because maybe they do underwriting online, they do collections online. The business model is different. So in terms of like a diligence perspective, both from FTD and CDD, are they structurally different? Do you go about doing it very differently structurally, or is it more of the same?
Look, Dave, I think it's very difficult to generalize. In tech also, some people call it tech, but they're actually not tech, right? They maybe just have one aspect, one leg, tech, and they start calling them fintech, just to get higher valuation.
Correct.
So, I mean, honestly, the structure remains same. What are, you got to deliberate internally and you got to discuss with the client what are the top 3 to 5 things because of which you are giving a particular value to the target. Now, if that aspect is net worth, the focus will remain on net worth. If that key thing is, the ability to, let's say, meet certain unit economics criteria in the most vintaged geographies or most vintage products, that becomes your critical area of diligence. If growth is the key reason why you're investing in that company, then your ability to grow customers, your churn in customers, your ticket size of customer, etc., that becomes critical. So it is very flex, cannot be a one straight answer. Yes, there are different nuances that have come into picture because of this whole tech evolution. So traditionally, when let's say in a lending business, the key focus would be on the quality of book and quality of growth. There are new attributes getting added, in terms of underwriting, as you mentioned. Will that underwriting make it scalable? But then the question will become: is underwriting really happening, on an autopilot mode, or there is a significant manual intervention still happening, right? If there's just a credit filter that is getting applied, but you get to know that 90% of the underwritten cases still have a manual intervention, and unfortunately it is still in the trying and testing mode, and maybe it is not really fintech. Sorry for the long answer to your simple question, but I think depends upon deal to deal and depends upon the thesis on which the investor is putting in his money.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, Anurag, I think that those are all the questions that we had. Thank you so much for taking our time. Really appreciate it. We definitely found it very useful, and hopefully all the listeners will find a lot of value and wisdom and everything that you shared. Thank you so much.
Great job, both of you, Aman and
Thank you,
I
Anurag.
think you're doing a great job by having these series, and all the best to both of you. And thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks a lot for watching the video. Hope you found it useful and also got a few actionable insights.
Check out our website and join the mailing list for regular content. Do spread the word and share it with anyone else you think might find this useful.